Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and good evening. As you know, it's just after 8:30 here in the United Kingdom and we're coming to you live from the studios of British Muslim TV here in Wakefield with this week's edition of Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We're broadcasting on Sky Channel 752 and across social media at British Muslim TV. Wherever you are joining us from around the world, a very warm welcome. We want you to comment on the big story we're covering tonight. Call us now on 01924 231 083. Your messages on WhatsApp number is on the screen now. And if you're watching on Facebook, please post your comments in the chat box and we'll read some of them on air later. Now, on Thursday, the 8th of September at 6:30 p.m. UK time, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who died peacefully at Balmoral Castle, surrounded by her eldest son, Prince Charles, and sister, Princess Anne. The exact moment the Queen died was also the moment that Prince Charles became King Charles, and he will now reign as King Charles III. One of the things that really demonstrated her impact on history was that her first Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, was born in 1870, and her 15th and what sadly became her final Prime Minister, Liz Truss, was born in 1970. The Queen represented the history of our nation and the world. And it's through her story, our nation's story has been told. And that links directly to that wartime generation in World War II. Throughout her life, we've seen so much change, turmoil, moments of celebration and joy, and sadness and unhappiness. Yet one thing remained the same. She remained an ever-presence in our lives. Now, whether you support the monarchy or not, we must surely find it in our hearts to feel that firstly, it is the death of a much-loved mother, grandmother and great-grandmother. And secondly, the death of the head of state of the country we are proud to call our home. So we should take pride in offering our condolences and love to the royal family and our fellow citizens who are in a state of mourning. Her Majesty the Queen had an extraordinary 70 years on the British throne, and she recently celebrated a Platinum Jubilee in June. She was the head of the Commonwealth and had a great interest in different faiths, cultures and ethnicities. It's something which I remember a conversation in 1997 around faith and the pride that she had that Britain was a multi-faith and multi-ethnic society when I met her at Buckingham Palace garden party in 1997. So tonight I want to send my deepest condolences and those of British Muslim TV to King Charles III, members of the royal family and our fellow citizens. It's often said that the days ahead following the death of a close family member or somebody that you love and respect will be difficult, and this will truly be difficult for the nation. But as we know, life will go on, and in the words of the Queen herself, we will rejoice once again. Tonight, we devote the whole programme to reflecting on the life and impact of her death on the nation, Commonwealth and the world. So we want to hear from you tonight. You can call us on 01924 231 083 or messages on British Muslim TV across social media. Alternatively, you can send us a WhatsApp message. The number is on your screen. The questions we're considering tonight: what is your reaction to the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II? How will you remember the Queen? And what do you expect from the new King Charles III? Please share your thoughts. 01924 231 083. Messages on WhatsApp, post on social media, and we'll read some of your comments throughout the programme. Tonight, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's body is lying in state at Westminster Hall, where thousands are marching past in tribute and to give thanks for the life of service that Her Majesty gave to the nation. Her children, led by King Charles, followed the body and coffin in a procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall, and extraordinary scenes from the streets of London with the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who were gathered. We'll head just up the road here in Wakefield to talk to Cllr Nadeem Ahmed of the Conservative Party about his reflections and tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Now let's reflect on the death of Her Majesty the Queen with Cllr Nadeem Ahmed from the Conservative Party here in Wakefield. I'm pleased to say Cllr Ahmed joins us live from Wakefield. Cllr Ahmed, a very warm welcome back to the programme. and thank you so much for having this conversation. First of all, what's your reaction to the death of Her Majesty the Queen?
I think when I first heard the news, it was when she did the welcoming, obviously when she went to Balmoral Castle, and she was there, we saw slowly Prince Charles emerge, obviously taking on the role that Her Majesty would have done, and you could see that she wasn't well in that photograph. People pointed out the hand image, etc. But we didn't, because she's been around all my lifetime. My parents, when they came to England, and it's a sad moment because she's held that position of being the Queen, the monarch for the country. So it was a sad moment for people like myself who've actually been to Buckingham Palace as well. We get a rare occasion that we can go down. We only have one chance. So it was a very sad occasion for me, and a lot of the people that I know felt saddened, and that's why we're watching TV, finding out what's happening there, and we can see that grief that's been shared across other people as well, and other nations, groups. And as you've mentioned there, we can see the amount of people that are out in London, the amount of people that were out in Scotland to pay their respects. It shows that there is a lot of respect for the Queen herself, the idea of monarchy as well. And I think the monarchy is safe because of what the Queen's done, and hopefully the training that she's given and the learning that Charles has made will make him a good king in the future as well.
Now, I said earlier that the Queen was all that we all knew in our lives. You mentioned that about our parents' generation. And it's going to feel strange that she's no longer in our lives, and it'll take some to get used to. I mean, even the idea of me saying King Charles the Third feels really strange. How is it for you as a political leader?
I mean, the Queen herself was a big personality. She held, we saw that in the COVID. She delivered something. I mean, Boris was on TV every day as PM, but the impact, the one speech she did, that short speech, she was sat down. She wasn't doing any of the political hand gestures, anything like that. Just being herself and having that, doing that speech to TV meant more, I think, in COVID to people than any of the speeches that other people had done. And
the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson actually said this at the weekend in his tribute. He said you could put all the world's politicians on one side and the pop stars and the football stars, and it wouldn't equate the impact of her intervention and her speech.
I think, when you have them elders in the family, when they speak, everyone goes quiet.
Yeah.
You know that elder, that was one in the family. And it's not every single elder that has that status. Although we respect all our elders, there's always one person in the family. When that person speaks, you all listen. And the Queen, not because of her position, I think she just had that. She'd taken the role on at a very young age. In the circumstances she took it on, she was quite in this day and age, the relative number, we've got people still at universities doing that, and she took that on and she made it her own role. And we know that she visited many different countries around the world, many different prime ministers, and so she had her own sort of like presence. For a small lady as well, but she had that presence, projection, and I think people appreciated that beyond just this country as well. We've seen that in Scotland, and we'll see that. I think, like you said, it's going to be one of the largest funerals probably in the world, with the amount of world leaders that are coming down, people that paid their respect from different countries all around the world. And you can see why people have done that, because we've seen her all our lives. We've seen the Christmas speeches when she's been out on certain moments of COVID, particularly in COVID, we saw her come forward as well and bring people together, particularly in tough times when we weren't able to see family members. We were in difficult times. Not many people knew that we would come to this stage here where vaccine program, everything happened. But the Queen was a reassuring person. And like Boris Johnson was right in there. I don't think he could ever deliver what the Queen did in that short moment she was on TV.
Yeah, it's true. And we've seen the nation come together to mourn the Queen. It makes the differences and the political, debate that goes on in this country, it feels really small now, the way politically all the parties are together and mourning the Queen.
Yeah, it does. Politics is on hold. There's not been any political statements made. And I think that's the right thing to do, particularly for the respect of, we always respect people who have passed away, but the respect the Queen held, and as the leader of our, she was the head of state. She was also the head of the Church of England as well, so she had that religious title as well. So it's only right that those politicians offer their condolences and show that respect. But we've seen today on TV, I've just seen as I came home today, the amount of people that queued up. And we've got, we said, certain people that are, might not be pro-monarchy, but they will respect the Queen herself, the status that the Queen had, the way she lived her life. You can't always, we're not held, well, hopefully we're not held responsible for the actions of all our family members, but I think the Queen, throughout her life, held herself in good stead. She showed dignity, respect, and the way she lived all her life. I think, and that's difficult to do that, particularly when you've got so much media attention on you and watching every single move. And,
it can be tough.
Can go wrong.
Yeah, it can be really tough. We've got about 90 seconds before our break. I just wanted to ask you, how is Wakefield Council and sort of the city of Wakefield remembering the Queen?
Wakefield Council has done, obviously the mayor has led most of the tributes towards the Queen. The council leader has as well, and obviously the leader of the opposition and other leaders of the opposition have done their sport. There's a book of condolences opened in Wakefield as well. And like Wakefield, people will remember their own way that the Queen did come here, and the people are talking about their own memories as well. So that's what the council has done here, and I think it was right to do that. The council meeting next week has been postponed to the week after for that reason as well. So that's Wakefield has its own way of remembering the Queen, and we'll also be part of that, remembering the life of the Queen and remember the positive things that she's done. And I know that a lot of the schools, I work with schools as well, most of the schools that I'm working with at the moment have put, particularly the Church of England schools have done special prayers and remembered key quotes that she made as well in her life. Yeah,
well, I know you're going to stay with us. We just need to take a quick break and we're going to continue this tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II on the day that her body is now lying in state at Westminster Hall. I'm Mohammed Shafiq. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back very shortly. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios in Wakefield. We're remembering Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II, who died sadly on Thursday. We're opening the lines on 01924 231 083. You can get in touch with us on social media, handled British Muslim TV. We're talking in an exclusive conversation with Cllr Nadeem Ahmed, who's joining us live from here in Wakefield. Councillor Ahmed, before the break, we talked about how the council is remembering the Queen. What's the reaction been like on the streets of Wakefield?
I think the streets of Wakefield at the moment, I think there's been, obviously we saw the people turn up to the signing of the Book of Condolence, etc. on there. So at the moment, I think people are looking, there hasn't been much that I've seen particularly. What we've seen is main thrust has been down London. And in there, you've seen the people remembering their own way, mentioning, on social media, you've seen people speaking about when they met the Queen or they've received a letter, different aspects. A lot of, and people are speaking about that. But I think when we see particularly on Monday, the bank holiday, I think we'll probably see more communal events take place. People get together and perhaps sit down and watch the funeral, like we did with Diana. Because I think the Queen obviously has much more authority than Diana did, but I think Diana had also a special place in many people's heart in Wakefield and other places as well. And you saw the way that people stopped when her funeral was taking place and in their own way showed their respect.
That's really true. There's been an outpouring of grief across the world, and doesn't it really show how loved the Queen was around the globe? The sense of President Biden, to the King of Saudi Arabia, and such a diverse range of Commonwealth countries of all the world coming together to remember the Queen.
It is. You've seen, like you've just said there, obviously she's the Queen of other places that we know, but particularly the Commonwealth. And you've seen that Biden's personally called King Charles and giving his condolences, like we do as Muslims. We give condolences to our family members, and people give us condolences. And I think that shows the respect that the Queen held. And as we know, if we look at other monarchies around the world, we're obviously a parliamentary monarchy, a parliamentary constitution here, but she's had a long reign, healthy, been here as a constant, regardless of who's been the prime minister, which political party's been in power. We've always known that the Queen has been the head of the state. And I think that message around the world shows a stable country. And that's why I think across Commonwealth countries, although there is, obviously there's certain things that have popped up in the media, but overwhelmingly, I think it's been a positive message from places like Muslim countries as well, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, and you'll see that when the funeral takes place, we'll see them people come here and obviously represent their countries, particularly within the funeral. And I think their expectation, I think the Mayor Sadiq Khan of London mentioned that they're expecting, I think some hundreds of leaders of different countries to be here to show their respect on the funeral. And I think that shows there's a little personality of the Queen herself there, because not everybody carries that personality, and I'm hoping that King Charles does as well. But she had a personal respect across countries around the world, even when they weren't necessarily, monarchies themselves. Pakistan gained their freedom, India did. But we saw when, the members of the royal family have been there to them countries, there was a respect for the British monarchy, and particularly the Queen herself, even from countries that aren't necessarily friendly with us at the moment as well.
Yeah, that's true. You mentioned the statement there from the White House. President Joe Biden has been speaking to King Charles this evening. He's expressed his condolences in a statement. He says the great admiration of the American people for the Queen. It says the president recalled fondly the Queen's kindness and hospitality, including when she hosted him and the First Lady at Windsor Castle last June. And the Queen's dignity and constancy deepens the ensuring friendship and special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom. And he said that President Biden wanted to continue a close relationship with the new king. The US President Joe Biden is arriving in the UK on Saturday evening alongside his wife, the First Lady, Jill Biden, as well. As you rightly said, many world leaders will be here and we'll reflect on the funeral in the programme next week. You mentioned the Commonwealth, and particularly for people like yourself and myself who come from Pakistan and so the Indian subcontinent, she's been an important part of the life of the Commonwealth, hasn't she?
I mean, you'll know this. Our parents, they won't say that the government called them to England. They will say that they were invited by the Queen. And that's what my dad said. I mean, he's not well, but he'll still, when we told him, she said, she's the one that, invited us here. And we came on invitation because the economy was battered in England. And we came here and our parents did their bit for the country and developed, industries that otherwise would have been thrashed. And they personally hold that the Queen invited them. There was no politician or political party. And that was the idea of the idea of Queen Elizabeth. It wasn't anybody else. And she's been the constant. And I think constant throughout their lives as well, with living in England. And you've seen, like you said, how many prime ministers, if you look back, Winston Churchill, it seems like a lifetime ago. That was her first prime minister. And we've seen recently a number of different prime ministers change. But the Queen's been that, and she's kept away from politics. If you look, she's been there. She's had a massive presence, but she's not interfered in the political processes of this country, hasn't given her a personal opinion, even when there's been tough times. If you look through the European referendum, she's, the closing of Parliament, she's almost like kept out of politics and been a true leader in that sense, where she's been apolitical and she's held her own self in great respect for other people. But like you said, our families, a lot of our families that have come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, feel that connection more with the Queen than they would do with any leader at that time that might have been in power. They always speak about the Queen and the fact that they came to country because of the invitation from her, nobody else. They don't mention. I've never heard anybody mention anybody else. I'm not sure if that's universal, but that's I'm speaking from my own family there.
I can certainly vouch for that, and certainly my mother in particular would actually say the same thing. What do you make of King Charles's first few days? He's been very busy travelling around the United Kingdom, as well as having to mourn his mother in such a public way as well, and lots of pressure on him. How do you think the transition to the new monarch has gone?
I mean, like you said, the moment the Queen dies, he automatically becomes, without, and obviously the coronation will be the official part of that. And there was, because the Queen was such a strong personality, there's a lot of eyes on King Charles to see how he does. And I think this man's been if the Queen's been one of the longest serving monarchs, he'll be one of the longest serving Prince of Wales. And he's learned directly from his father, who passed away recently, Prince Philip. And he had, obviously, Lord Mountbatten until he passed away as well. And he's had the guidance from probably the best people that he could have done, his own mother, his own father, and his uncle. And he is, I think, he's a worthy king. And we will see, we've seen Charles defend, obviously, I've mentioned, defend Islam in sometimes when the media was certain parts of the media were portraying negative images. And he's always spoken. We've seen that emerge now. Just speaking myself, though he is technically will be and is the head of the Church of England, and King Charles, I think, will show us that he's been trained by. You can't get a better training than your own parents.
Yeah,
and he's had that training. And if we look at that, this man just watched his mother probably pass away, like you said, peacefully in a sleep, and then has had probably the world's media on his case, watching his every single move, and he's held himself in such, just to somebody to hold their own in public, that mourning process. He's not had that privacy that some people are entitled to. And, we know that he's, throughout his life, he's spoken up on issues that are important to him. He's not held back of, climate change, religion. He said he wanted to be a defender of all faiths. That's what I think. I clearly remember one of the speeches that he did mentioning that. And I think, given his training from key family members and the amount of time he's been Prince of Wales, I think he's a mature age as well. He will show us and the world that he was the worthy successor of our Queen.
Final question, sir. How will you remember the Queen?
I think for me, I will remember the Queen as, if we look at life and, if we can live a life honourably, and, if we look back on our life and say, I've lived an honourable life, I think we can say for the Queen, she lived an honourable life and she held herself well. I think she was a respectful lady. She was an honourable woman, and she lived a life in the public face from a young age. And I think that's what I remember about her values, and how she didn't, over time, she didn't sacrifice her values. She remained pretty much the same person throughout her life, whilst being in the public eye. And that's what we remember about her, that kind, respectful person that she is. And I think she would, King Charles will always be compared to his mother. And I think, we look at our own parents, we always hold them in high esteem. And I think the Queen was like a parent to people, at their home, so she, the young people that I speak to in schools, even people that have come from different countries, say that about the Queen, her values, the way she carried herself in public, the way she's respectful. And I think they said there was something like 20 or 30% of the people in this country had met her. We had an opportunity. It was only one councillors are allowed to go to the garden party. So it shows that she's spent all her life in service to this country. And it's not something, obviously you can say, people, say what we want about that, but that somebody's, she's lived from a young age in total dedication to what she's been, public facing, doing this meeting, charitable work. And I think that's a life full of service.
Well, thank you so much, Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, for joining us and paying tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
Thank you very much, Shafiq. Thank you.
Yeah, and as we were talking there, the US President has had a conversation to offer his condolences on behalf of the American people. Buckingham Palace has also confirmed that King Charles III has spoken to President Macron of France. He's also spoken to the President of the Republic of Ireland. He met him yesterday, Michael Higgins, and also spoken to the Governor-Generals of Australia, Canada and Jamaica. And the next couple of days, he'll be busy taking those calls because Her Majesty the Queen is lying in state. At the moment, as we are gathered here tonight, the queue is currently 2.4 miles long to get into Westminster Hall to pay your tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. It goes all the way back to London Bridge and Borough Market. There is a YouTube stream from the British government, UK government, which gives you an update, and we'll keep an eye on that. We'll keep an eye on those statements coming from Buckingham Palace. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Imam Qari Asim from Leeds Makkah Mosque and the chair of MINAB UK as he reflects on his meetings with Her Majesty the Queen Elizabeth II. Good evening, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq, exclusively here on British Muslim TV, live from our studios in Wakefield. We're reflecting on the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. You can share your memories now of the Queen by calling us on 01924 231 083 or get in touch with us on social media handles British Muslim TV. Now, as a practicing Christian, faith was an important component of the story of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth's lifetime of service. Whether it was her devotion to the Commonwealth, meeting faith leaders and seeing the positive impact of faith in our lives, the Queen was a proud believer, and that showed. Imam Qari Asim MBE is the chair of the Mosque Imam National Advisory Board, MINAB UK. He's met the Queen a number of times over the years, and I'm pleased to say he's joining us live from Leeds. Imam Qari Asim, a warm welcome to the programme as we reflect on the death of Her Majesty the Queen.
Assalamu alaikum, Brother Shafiq. Thank you so much for having me on British Muslim TV. It's really pertinent and poignant that we are marking this episode by remembering Her late Majesty the Queen and paying tribute to a lifelong public service, as well as welcoming the new King, King Charles III.
The sense is that we always remember where we were when the death announcement was made. I was on a train coming from London back up to Manchester when the announcement pinged on my phone. How did you find out about the news?
So I was actually I was working, and it was just the news popped up on my laptop that effectively Queen was critically ill, and all the family members had been invited to the Balmoral Castle, and I think pretty much you knew that the Queen was about to pass away. And I think then all of us were glued to the screens trying to find out what was happening, hoping and praying that she gained a speedy recovery, but also at the same time that she she finds comfort in whatever position she is in. And then very shortly afterwards, we found out, obviously, the Queen had passed away. And I think it's really something that we all, as Muslims in particular, we believe is inevitable. But every time we hear about the passing away of someone, it really affects us. And when you hear the news of passing away of a remarkable lady of our time, who epitomized some of the most noble characteristics, which are increasingly rarely found in public life, like dignity, humility, grace, as well as resolute faith, resilience, and more importantly, a selfless dedication to public service. Passing away of someone who had embodied these noble characteristics is not something that you come across in a decade. This is the Queen lived a life in which she touched the hearts of people across the world. She was a global icon of distinguished and dutiful leadership. And I think whilst we collectively are grieving the sad loss of Her Majesty the Queen, at the same time we are celebrating the life and the legacy that Her Majesty the Queen has left, and the hugely inspiring life that she lived. And some might say, actually, pretty much, she will be remembered for selfless dedication and a lifelong public service. And in a way, if we consider the model of Muslim leadership, this is what it's about. It's about serving people. The fact that I have had the privilege of meeting the Queen a number of times.
I was going to.
The last time I met her was at Buckingham Palace in 2018 with lots of faith leaders and interfaith activists. And for a whole hour, the Queen stood in one place without any support at the age of 92, shaking hands with people, talking to people, and that was truly remarkable. Yeah. And when you saw the Queen, you realized that you were in the presence of a huge personality. Yeah. Although she was petite and short in height, but actually her stature, her demeanor, and her dignity.
Sorry, Imam. I was just going to ask you. Sorry, interject there. But as we're talking about faith was very important to her. I remember a conversation I had with the Queen in 1997 at the time of the Golden Jubilee. At the time of a Buckingham Palace garden party, where she said she was so proud that Britain was a multi-faith society. Do you think that's one of her legacies? The fact that Britain, from the time when she came to the throne, has completely transformed into this multi-ethnic, multi-faith society?
Absolutely. I think a number of things can be said about that. Effectively, firstly, if you look at a Christmas message, for a non-Muslim household, Christmas is not as relevant as perhaps if you are of the Christian faith or otherwise. But actually, everyone was glued to the TV, especially 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Wanted to hear Queen's Christmas message. So Christianity was the anchor in the Queen's faith. Christianity was anchored in the Queen's heart, and it was the faith that she publicly celebrated. But at the same time, she made her Christmas message relevant to everyone. She talked about diversity in her Christmas messages. In various speeches, she celebrated the multi-faith, multi-belief aspect of Britain, and in particular, at the time of Diamond Jubilee in 2012, I vividly remember being at Buckingham Palace, at Lambeth Palace, along with other faith leaders, and there the Queen talked about how the role of the church and how it was about celebrating and promoting religious harmony. That's I think one of the key things that we will remember about the Queen in terms of promoting religious harmony and celebrating that. And in that speech in 2012, the Queen talked about that a clear, explicit commitment to Christian doctrine does not mean an anxious or arrogant spirit that seeks to exclude the commitment of others. And she went on to, she went on to say then effectively that we will be that diversity should not be treated as a threat, rather is something that has made Britain a much more powerful nation and something that we can be proud of.
Yeah. I know the past 70 years we've seen a tremendous amount of change in our world, yet she remained the ever-present. How difficult do you think it will be for the whole nation to move on?
I think this is another amazing thing about the Queen. Effectively, 70 years of long service. She had a reassuring presence. She had a constant presence, and that's what that's what something that would be missed. During her reign, the Queen saw effectively enormous social change, political change. But despite all of that, instead of resisting this change, the Queen embraced the change. And during her reign, the Queen displayed an unwavering desire to promote diversity, as well as displaying deep respect for other people's beliefs. She had a really inquisitive mind and huge capacity to listen to people attentively. She was interested in people's cultures, people's beliefs, and in a way, she inspired confidence, because she made people at ease. Despite her overwhelming presence, she made people at ease, and therefore people were able to converse with her. So she combined this splendid with the ordinary. And as far as as far as the social change and political change that was taking place during her time, the queen evolved with time and didn't really she modernized to an extent the institution of monarchy. And I think the new King Charles III will go on to modernize the institution of monarchy even more so and make it more relevant. Especially I think for Muslims, we take great comfort in the fact that King Charles III has, in an all too common Islamophobic environment, he has gone out of his way to show an interest in Islam and also show an interest in the Muslim community.
We're going to talk about King Charles just after the break. We're coming up to in about 3 minutes. But just tell us, there's been lots of debate in the Muslim community about how we should respond to her death. Can you set out what's the Islamic opinion about how we should respond to a death of somebody who's not a Muslim but is the head of our state?
Yeah, I think it's obviously it's really pertinent and really good that Muslims have a reference point as their faith, and therefore they want to go back to their faith, the fundamentals of their faith, and trying to define their relationships as well as whatever they do or say, that it's rooted in our faith. Now, our faith is a universal faith, Islam, and therefore the Prophet ﷺ is the guiding principle that we have in the sense that he's our role model. So it's not something that we kind of just go with our desires and whims. And there are a number of examples and incidents in the life of the Prophet ﷺ where he showed respect to the funeral of people of other faiths. He also paid tribute to people when they had passed away, non-Muslims. And there's one particular incident at the time of Badr that the Prophet ﷺ, so this is after having won a war, after having established a state in Medina Munawwara where the Muslims are now victorious. So there's no pressure, there's no demand being made on them. Yet the Prophet ﷺ referred to one key individual, Mu'tam, at that time, who had passed away, who had died. And the Prophet ﷺ paid tribute to his wisdom and his courage and his leadership. And he said, if Mu'tam today was alive, and if he had asked me to free all of the captives that have been caught in this war, I would have set them free. He didn't say if Sayyidina Abu Bakr Siddiq or Sayyidina Imam Ali or Umar Farooq or Osman Ghani or Abu Huraira or Muaz bin Jabal or any of the companions. He referred to pay tribute at the time when Muslims are victorious. In a way, he didn't have to do that. But the Prophet ﷺ, what he was saying, that leadership is something that when we are especially when we have received favors, and I think Queen is our...
Sorry, Imam Qari Asim, apologies to interrupt you there. I do want to come back to this point, but we're going to have to take a very quick break. You're watching our British Muslim TV tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. We'll take a break. We'll be back. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We're paying tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who died last Thursday, who, as we speak now, is lying in state at Westminster Hall, where thousands are queuing. The queue is now 2.4 miles long. Many of them will have to queue through the night and for the next 4 days to get a chance to pay their own personal, private tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. We are joined by the chair of MINAB, Imam Qari Asim, live from Leeds. Imam Qari Asim, sorry, I interrupted you there, but I just wanted you to finish that point. You were talking about the Prophet ﷺ and the hadith.
We were saying the Prophet ﷺ paid tribute to a wise, a courageous leader that had passed away. And so we can take from that is actually is part of the prophetic tradition to pay tribute and give credit where it's due. Now, the Queen's extraordinary lifetime of service and duty to her people, which includes Muslims and people of all faiths and none, her service to her people is unparalleled in the modern world. And then when it came to the Muslims, the Queen enjoyed a dignified relationship with Muslims across the world. As head of the Commonwealth, the Queen served the Commonwealth nations, which comprise of 6 Muslim majority countries, as well as other countries with large Muslim minorities. And it was really heartening to see many mosques across the country pay tribute to the Queen's lifetime achievements, as well as her public service and her dignity, the qualities that she had, which are rare in public life. And those were celebrated, and effectively people, mosques and imams, paid tribute to the Queen to show that they valued the dignity and dignified relationship that the Queen had enjoyed with Muslims.
You said, and I know time is of the essence, so really appreciate time tonight. You said you will be praying for the Queen. What do you mean by this from an Islamic perspective, as many people are asking on social media about this?
I think when we're saying praying for the Queen, we're saying we'll be paying a tribute to the Queen and also praying for King Charles and for our nation, because obviously we're going through a time of national grief and a collective grief, and as a result, it's the time when we pray for each other that God Almighty grants our new King wisdom and courage and integrity to lead the nation and make decisions to the best interests of all of the people in this country, and also the most sovereign Lord gives the sovereign in this country the ability to build communities and bring communities together and celebrate the diversity and the religious harmony that we have in this country. So
you're not praying for her now that she's gone. That's between her and God. You're praying for the monarchy.
Right. I think some people are perhaps focused on words. So we are praying for the nation and praying for the future king in terms of where we are. We pay tribute to the Queen, but we are praying for the nation. Yeah,
thank you so much for clearing that up. You know how people can take words out of context. I'm really glad you've done that. I suppose I had the honour of meeting Prince Charles. Sorry, it's going to take me a while. Sorry, Imam. King Charles, as he's become our new sovereign. He's a man with a great link with Islam and a lot of respect for Muslims. How do you see his reign as our new sovereign?
I think we take great comfort in the fact that King Charles has had a long period of public interest in all faiths. And obviously we're going to talk about our faith, Islam, and his interest in British Muslim communities is quite evident. The king has been quite public about his admiration for Islam as a religion, as well as the Muslim communities, the architecture of Islam, the art of Islam, the king has been a champion of environmentalism and Islam. The primary sources of Islam promote environmentalism and effectively ask us to be more vigilant about our lifestyles and how we protect the world that we live in. And so, the new king has gone much further than just good politics of being tolerant and respectful to a faith. But he, when it came to Muslim communities, worldwide, he stated clearly in one of his famous speeches in 1993, he said, "For that which binds our two worlds together is so much more powerful than that which divides us. Muslims, Christians, and Jews are all people of the book." And that interest is also clear in his views about Muslim communities of the past and their contribution to Western civilization. And there's much that's quoted about him.
Thank you so much, Imam Qari Asim, for joining us tonight and paying your personal tribute to Her Majesty the Queen. And I know many British Muslims across the country will be feeling the same. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, sir.
Thank you.
That was Imam Qari Asim joining us live from Leeds. Let's take a call. Let's go to the brother in London. Assalamu alaikum. You're live on British Muslim TV.
Yeah, hi. Look,
What would you like to say?
well, listen, I'm sitting here in agony, you know. My ears are on fire and I'll probably go up in flames. I don't agree. Listen, I can't paint a rosy picture about any of this. I mean, your imam there, he said a lot, and even the conservative. Did you not invite people who are for the Republic? I don't get it. You know, because it seems like every channel is the same. It's really getting boring. And the fact that you're wearing that in black, you'd think it was one of your family members that just passed away. Look, my friend, I have nothing in common with this woman. You know, whatever she was.
Sorry, so let's have a conversation. So first of all,
me off, because that's
I'm
what
not.
they do.
Well, do you know what we're going?
Else is going to call it.
Sorry, let's have a conversation. Yeah, let's not insult each other on the air. Are you still there?
Well, no.
Yeah, let's have a conversation. Let's do it respectfully, okay? I respect your view. You respect me. So let's listen to me, my brother. We'll talk nicely to each other, inshallah. We'll have a good conversation. First of all, it's about respect and courtesy and respect. Now, it's not about being from the monarchy, so you don't support the monarchy. Do you think it's able for us to show some respect to the head of a state who's passed away, in which you live and I live as well?
I will. Well, allow me to answer that. Look,
Bismillah.
What is this head of state, my friend? I don't agree with this head of state. I never voted for this woman. Okay, you say head of state, and they get funny about this. They say head of state, and when you hold that against him, they say, "Oh, it's just a figurehead." They all talk in riddles. And you say it makes no sense. Even the prime minister has to get permission to be a prime minister. I don't understand any of this. I never pledge allegiance to this family, to this woman. Okay, as much as I don't dislike her son, I'm glad he's there. He's nothing racist like his father, and you can't hold that against me because he is known for that. Yeah, even her paedophilic son, I'm quite sure.
Sorry, I'm going to have. Yeah, come on, let's keep it decent. Okay, that's all I'm saying to you. Are you still there? Let's keep it decent.
Yeah.
Let's keep it decent. Come on, let's keep. We'll have a deep conversation. But do you have a British passport?
But look at.
Do you have money in your pocket?
Yes.
So if you open,
I know where you get.
Bro, let me have a conversation. Let me have a conversation. Don't shout over me, yeah, please. I'm having a conversation with you. It's not going to work if you are going to shout over me. Let me ask you the question. You can answer. That's how we do it. Okay, respectfully, because that's how we do it as Muslims.
Okay.
You've got a British passport, and the front of that page is the oath to Her Majesty the Queen.
Yeah. Okay.
So do you have a British passport, and you do travel on that British passport?
Yeah, but that's only for travel purposes, my friend. I don't.
But it's got an oath on. It's got an oath on the front of the passport, is it not?
Okay, whatever. But I didn't make that passport, my friend. I've been here since day one. I keep telling you, I never said the words. I never pledged allegiance to this woman. If she was here in front of me, let me answer your question. If she was here in front of me and she was in any kind of distress and she asked my help, I can't promise that I would help this woman, and she can't force me. Do you understand? Just because I live here, it doesn't mean to say I'm her slave or she owns me. You're getting it all wrong. I couldn't feel like a Muslim. I wouldn't do that for her. Do you understand? So you can say all that you want, and they can't jail me for it. Okay?
That's good. Well, that's your opinion, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing it with us tonight. Obviously, that's your perspective, and many people around the country would disagree with that opinion. At the heart of our deen, and I just Imam Asim didn't refer to it, but let me refer to it and tell you about the story of a funeral passing where the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ was sat. And what did Rasulullah do? It's in Bukhari. I don't know if you've ever read Bukhari Sharif. Maybe you should have a read of it, dear brother and the viewers. What did Rasulullah ﷺ do? He stood. He stood for this funeral to show his respect. And the Sahaba also stood because Rasulullah stood. And the Sahaba then said, Ya Rasulullah, a funeral is past, but the funeral is of a Jewish man. And Rasulullah replied, was he not a human being? So we're not asking you or anybody to pledge allegiance to the Queen or to the new king or to be support of the monarchy. But just at this moment when the nation is mourning and the country has lost the Queen, for us to show some respect, some decency and honour the person. How would we react if somebody quite publicly at the funeral of our mothers or our parents or our grandparents would post on social media about them in this sort of way, would judge them in a particular way? Again, I'm not asking you to be a supporter of the monarchy. Let me be very clear about that. But for us to attack them, to insult them, and to do it whilst they're going through a process of mourning is just disrespectful. And you've got your view, and I think lots of people would want to say that it's about decency, it's about respect, it's about condolence. And when the debate moves on, and the story moves on, as surely it always does, there'll be opportunities for people to have their say. If you also want to share your thoughts, again, it's an open platform, but let's have a chat and let's be respectful to each other. 01924 231 083. After the break, we're going to head to Greater Manchester and talk to the Deputy Leader of Bury Council, Cllr Tamoor Tariq of the Labour Party, about his memories of Her Majesty the Queen. And again, by showing respect and showing condolences doesn't mean you endorse everything about the person who is receiving that. I hope that clears that up. If you disagree with me, let's have a chat. 01924 231 083. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to head to Bury, as I said, and talk to Cllr Tamoor Tariq. You are watching a tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, exclusively here on British Muslim TV with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We'll take that break. We'll be back very shortly. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Questions with me, Mohammed Shafiq. This week we are remembering Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who sadly died on Thursday. And as we speak tonight, is lying at state in Westminster Hall, where members of the public are being given the opportunity to go in and to pay tribute to the Queen. Just a couple of updates on that. Just telling you, the queues are 2.5 miles, which go all the way back to London Bridge. If you know that part of London, that's a long way away. They'll be given wristbands, and obviously it's fast-paced moving. It's going on for 4 days up until the early morning of the funeral, which is on Monday, the 19th of September, which is this coming Monday. And on that day, the viewing will stop at 6:30 in the morning as preparation for the funeral is made. As we said in the last, we'll be going to Bury in Greater Manchester very, very shortly. Whilst we're waiting to do that, if you also want to share your thoughts and memories of Her Majesty the Queen, please do call us 01924 231 083. Bit of a lively debate there with a brother from London. As I said earlier on the programme, King Charles has been speaking to President Macron of France. He's spoken to President Biden of the United States, and also President Michael Higgins, who is the President of Ireland. Remember yesterday at that service in Northern Ireland, the President of Ireland went across, and so they would have met, and I've had a conversation tonight. He's also spoke to the Governors General of Australia, Canada and Jamaica, 3 countries where the Queen was the head of state in those countries as well. And as I said, the Queen is lying in state. It's the first person to lie in state since Winston Churchill. The Queen Mother also, she lied in Westminster Hall, but that wasn't a state occasion. And there's a massive security operation because when the funeral comes, it's going to be the most complex security operation London has ever seen, even bigger than the Olympic Games. There are 1,500 military personnel on the streets of London. There are Gurkhas, paratroopers, Royal Navy police officers, Royal Military Police, RAF personnel, and behind the scenes security services, MI5, MI6 are watching and keep an eye and protecting the country on the occasion from any threatened attack from terrorism. and you see armed police with binoculars visible on the roofs of Westminster. You know, and the Metropolitan Police today, their new Commissioner Mark Rowley was saying today that he wants to stress that the event itself is going to be unique and unprecedented, because much of the policing, however, much of the policing is very familiar to police officers. Yeah. So, and that, in a sense, is what is happening in London. And obviously, we've seen lots of the football matches come back together. The queue's 2.4 miles. It stretches all the way down the southern bank of the Thames to Southwark Bridge, past London Bridge, past Tower Bridge, and all the way back to Southwark Park. So if you want to join that queue, you would need to go to the Bermondsey tube station and then head sort of south to Southwark Park. So, as I said, and US President Joe Biden has been speaking to the new king tonight to express his condolences of the United States government and the people, and the great admiration that the American people had for the Queen. President Biden will be joined by his wife, the First Lady, Jill Biden, to travel to the funeral. They will be leaving Washington, D.C. on Saturday evening. Right, let's see if we can move on and think about, if you want to share your thoughts and experiences, please do give us your thoughts on 01924 23103. We've got some comments on Facebook, which we'll get through in a second as well. We're reflecting on the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who died on Thursday. Since the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II last Thursday, there's been a strong outpouring of grief and moments for us to reflect on her contribution to our nation's story. Now, often those differences that seem so strong have become irrelevant as the nation is united in grief. Cllr Tamoor Tariq is the Deputy Leader of Bury Council. He's a prominent figure in the Labour Party, but also in the British Muslim community. I'm pleased to say Cllr Tamoor Tariq is joining us live on British Muslim TV from the city, from Bury. Let's hope it makes Bury into a city. Cllr Tamoor Tariq, assalamu alaikum, welcome to the programme.
Walaikum salam, pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much. First of all, what's your reaction to the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II?
I think just the same as most people in the country. It's obviously been a very sad time, certainly for most of the population who've only known one monarch and one sovereign, and the Queen, in most people's lives, has always been this everlasting presence, no matter what difficulty the country's been through, no matter what turmoil, no matter who the government, who the Prime Minister, no matter the international implications for the United Kingdom, the Queen has always been there as a long-term presence for the country. And one of my main observations, and I hope that people from our community can acknowledge and celebrate this even more, that when our first generation migrated here to the United Kingdom, they started in the 50s and 60s. To them, the royal family and the Queen in particular meant an awful lot. And it was the first recognition, the first symbol of the country that they were able to call home, that gave them the opportunity to settle here, to bring their families over and to build a better life. So really the passing of the Queen takes away that everlasting presence that the first generation really had strong ties with. So I think we have a duty, certainly when I think about my grandparents' generation, other people from the first generation, we have a duty to keep their memories alive and just remember that the things that they resonate with, that they have links with when we think of the United Kingdom that was when they first migrated here so many years ago.
How is Bury marking this sad moment?
So like many localities, Bury has been at the forefront of acknowledging the sad death of the late Queen Elizabeth II. We've been, in terms of having our council buildings across the 6 townships of Bury open for people to sign the book of condolences. Our Mayor, Councillor Shahina Haroon, has led the borough in mourning and has been able to lay a wreath on behalf of the people of Bury. The public were invited to that. Of course, there's been the proclamation ceremony taking place announcing the new king on Sunday. And of course, we're encouraging...
Sorry, Councillor Tariq, I just want to interrupt you. Just for our viewers who don't know what that is, proclamation, what is it?
So this is a historic, it's obviously not happened in this country since 1953, but it's a very historic, it goes back to the 16th, 17th century, where in each local area, the mayor of the particular area will announce the news from Buckingham Palace about the sad passing of one monarch and the announcement of their heir taking over. In this case, it was Prince Charles, who's now King Charles III. So it's basically following that very historic tradition. And of course, I suppose it doesn't have that same impact because back then, many centuries ago, there was no social media. There was no 24/7 news media as well. So the tradition carries on, but I suppose it doesn't have that same impact. It's more a symbolic recognition of the passing of one monarch and the new beginnings under the reign of another monarch. And, you know, I think these are very historic times that we are living through. Something like this obviously won't be seen now for many, many years to come.
Yeah, that's so true. And what does the Queen and her service, 70 years of service on the throne, mean to you and the community in Bury?
I think to the community in Bury, you know, when I've been speaking to my constituents, when I've been speaking to our council staff, our community groups and residents right across the borough, the Queen quite simply represents selfless service. Somebody who has shown through good times and bad times that dedication, that relentless focus on being a symbol of our country, of trying to unite people of all communities, those of religion, those of no religion, and somebody who's actually, you know, what we've seen of the royal family, they are like any other family who have ups and downs, challenges and difficulties, but the Queen has always been a key lead within the family, and it's almost symbolic of the role that she's played within the country, because just as she's led her family, she's very much led this country. And as I say, you know, if you just look at the last couple of years, through the global pandemic, something like we won't see a global pandemic of this scale for well over 100 years. She's somebody who's been able to witness that, been able to speak to the country at very significant moments in time, trying to bring a sense of stability, normality to what was a very difficult stage. So I think the Queen represents service, sacrifice, dedication, and the very best of the United Kingdom. Yeah. And I think it's just a reminder of how different the country now is, given her passing, the demographic change that we've seen since she first came to the throne to when she sadly departed. And, you know, I think it's a moment to acknowledge and celebrate her life, but also acknowledge what a different country that we've become during the time that she's reigned over us.
You know, we've got about just under a minute till our break, and I just reflecting with some of my other guests tonight that the Queen has always been the Queen all of our lives, and it'll be strange not having her there. You know, you might not pay much attention to her, you might not be a supporter of the monarchy, but she was always present there. How do you think the nation is going to cope without having the presence of the Queen there?
I think, look, after the sad passing of anyone that's quite prominent and significant and means so much to so many people, there's going to be a significant period of mourning for the country. Of course, you've got the standard 11 days, but I think it's going to take a lot longer for the whole country to actually acknowledge that the Queen is no longer with us, and actually accepting and acknowledging and getting used to saying King Charles the Third. We've not had a king in this country.
So, sorry, Councillor Tariq, just wait there because we're just going to take a very quick break and we'll come back to you. You're watching a live tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who died on Thursday, exclusively here on British Muslim TV with me, Mohammed Shafiq. We'll take our final break. When we come back, we'll continue the tribute to Her Majesty. Welcome back to our special tribute to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who is tonight, as I see the television screens, thousands are marching past her body at Westminster Hall. People of many different ethnicities and many faiths, most likely, men and women, all wanting to pay their respects to the Queen. We are joined by the Deputy Leader of Bury Council, Councillor Tamoor Tariq, who's a good friend of mine. I mean, just before the break, we were reflecting on getting used to the idea of the Queen not being there and having a new king, and that in itself is quite strange. We've seen the nation unite, Councillor Tariq. What do you make of the tributes from the politicians on all political sides and the religious leaders and the whole country coming together?
I think it's just a recognition of the best of our country and the best of the United Kingdom, that at a time of tragedy, of mourning and of a sad loss of someone who's so significant to so many people right across the country, no matter which religion you follow, no matter if you don't follow a religion, no matter what your age is, no matter if you're a man or a woman, a whole cross-section of society have been impacted and acknowledged the sad loss of Queen Elizabeth II. And I think the politicians of this country are no different. It's rare for politicians to show unity, but I think as politicians nationally have done at a time of crisis and challenge for the country, once again, this historic moment that's not been witnessed in this country since 1952, when Queen Elizabeth's father passed away, King George VI. Not since then have we seen this kind of occasion pass through our country. So it's hugely humbling, I think, to see politicians united in their condolences, in providing a message of unity to the country, and just allowing the country to acknowledge and allowing the news to sink in that Queen Elizabeth II is no longer with us. And it just shows that there are significant occasions in the country where we are above politics and where we put party politics aside, and we stand firm on British values, and we stand firm for what our country is about, what we represent. And of course, this transition from one monarch to another is something that we're all witnessing, something that many people in this country, most of our population, have never ever seen in their lifetime.
How do you see that? Sorry to interject again, with respect. What do you make of that transition? I mean, obviously, when we had the announcement on Thursday that sadly the Queen had passed away, just the sense of saying the King and the Queen consort is going to stay in Balmoral and return to London tomorrow, that in itself was like, wow, this has really happened. What do you think of the transition?
Yeah, so I think over recent years, people have started to learn about and become familiar with what was titled Operation London Bridge. So what would happen when one day the Queen passed away? It was inevitable. She was obviously aging. Her health wasn't the same. So it's something that people had turned their minds to. But to actually live through it and pick up and come to terms with the fact that when one monarch passes away, the heir to the throne literally takes over within seconds. It doesn't have to wait for an organised ceremony, that those do follow in due course. And it just shows the constitutional system that we've got in the United Kingdom, the fact that the monarchy will just continue, regardless of who is reigning. When one monarch passes away, it will just continue very, very efficiently, very naturally to the heir to the throne. And we saw that King Charles III became king almost instantly on the death of his mother. And, sometimes what I've noticed is we're not really acknowledging the human nature of this. We've got somebody with huge responsibility on his shoulder, who's been through an awful lot in his life, and also was the first sibling, the first child of the monarch to be there at Balmoral alongside Princess Anne, and just having to deal with the death of a parent, no matter what the age, it doesn't make it any easier. It doesn't,
does it? And the sense that he's had to do that, sorry, Councillor Tariq, he's had to do that in a very public way, within hours of his mum passing away. He's back in London, Privy Council meetings, proclamations, meeting the public, going to these services around the country. It's very much a public existence, and putting mourning his mother to his side whilst he deals with state affairs. And that must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, we can only imagine what that is like for him and for other members of the royal family. But I think we've got to be compassionate and considerate to the impact that it's having on them as individuals. We've seen Prince Harry, Prince William, Kate Middleton, Meghan Markle all come together at this time of grief. And I think that's really important as well for what they represent within the monarchy. They obviously speak to and represent and are very much in tune with the younger generation. And they will be going through a difficult time as well. The Queen has very much been a part of Prince William, Prince Harry's life right from the beginning, but in particular after the sad death of Princess Diana in 1997, she was very much been at their side through all the key milestones as they've gone through their teenage years and into adulthood. And of course, her other children, Prince Andrew, Prince Edward, as I mentioned, Princess Anne, and the wider family and the other grandchildren, it's going to have a significant impact on them. They're individuals as well, albeit everything is being played out in the public eye. And, you know, just as the country is mourning and acknowledging the tragic circumstances of the death of Queen Elizabeth II, of course, family members who are very, very close to the Queen are also going through that grief. And, you know, King Charles, say Prince Charles, but King Charles.
Yeah, it's going to take a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it is going to take a while to get used to that. King Charles III has obviously every single day he has been in some way, shape or form, been carrying out duties that mark the beginning of his reign, that mark the beginning of the transition from one monarch to another. He's currently on the tour of the United Kingdom. He's met with the Prime Minister. He's met with the Leader of the Opposition. He's been down to Parliament. All sorts have been going on. And this is a significant moment in history. We haven't yet had, of course, the coronation. That will either follow later this year or next year. Yeah. And that, again, will be another symbol, another kind of reminder of the continued transition process that we're going through with a new monarch. So we're living through history, and many of us won't see this in our lifetime again.
Yeah, you're so true. And you're talking about the coronation. We expect it. It's not confirmed. Anything's confirmed as yet because we're still in the mourning period. But we expect it in the spring at the earliest, if not later on in the year. You know, you're a child of the Commonwealth. I'm a child of the Commonwealth. Our families came here in the 50s and the 60s. What's the reaction from your parents? I suppose it's going to be similar to what my mum's been telling me.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, the Queen held a unique respect and love within all migrant communities, I would say, but in particular, those people from Pakistan. And like I say, from the first generation, I always will remember the fondness and the love that my grandparents had towards the royal family, and in particular, the Queen. It's the Queen and Princess Diana that always stood out, I think, for our elders in our community. And my parents have shared that same sympathy, that same sense of loss. That's something that our migrant communities, particularly those from South Asia, in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, are very closely connected with right from the start of migration in the 1950s. And I think those people from Pakistan also have been able to reflect on the various visits that the royal family have done to Pakistan. The Queen was there with President Ayub Khan back in the 60s. She went again in 1997. And it's a country that she was very fond of.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I just remember that bit because you talked about the trip to Pakistan in 1961. I tweeted about it a few days ago. She delivered a speech, and at the end of the speech, she said, "Aap Hazrat ka bahut bahut shukriya." And the people who were there at the time said it was absolutely beautifully delivered.
Yeah, and you know, I think that's just a symbol of how she recognized the importance of the relationship between the United Kingdom and Pakistan. You know, people forget, especially those on the right wing, that migration and people from Pakistan and South Asia only came over to this country because it was in need of their skills. It was in need of filling key gaps within the labour market. And it was in need of being rebuilt after World War II. And none of that would have happened if it wasn't for the first generation of our families and people from our community, if they hadn't come over and contributed. And that's why I know that people like the late Queen and others who were around at the time will always remember and have strong reflections and memories of those people who migrated here in the 1950s from our communities, who helped rebuild this country. Sometimes we forget that, but I know that people like the late Queen and others will always remember and cherish that. And that's why the relationship with countries like Pakistan, with countries like Bangladesh and India and other countries across the South Asia and across the Commonwealth, that's why there is that strong connection. Because if it wasn't for migrants from those countries, the United Kingdom wouldn't be what it is today. And that's something that we should continue to celebrate. And I personally think is a strong legacy passing on from the Queen's death. The fact that the people that she recognized and the people that recognized her as a symbol of rebuilding the United Kingdom after World War II, that's something that's, you know, it says a lot about who we are as a community and where this country is going and has gone since the last 20 years.
Councillor Tamoor Tariq, thank you so much for a beautiful tribute tonight, joining us live there from Bury. Councillor Tamoor Tariq, the Deputy Leader of Bury Council, joining us with his reflections on that. As we go off air tonight, Her Majesty the Queen is now lying in state inside Westminster Hall after her family marched behind her coffin through the heart of the capital. As we said, the funeral is happening on Monday, 11 o'clock. It's a bank holiday. And it's an opportunity for the country and the world to pay tribute and to say a thank you for a level of service. As I said, it's not always about supporting the monarchy. It's about reflecting on the historic nature of her service to the country. King Charles III led the royal family as they walked behind a coffin from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. And the coffin was draped with a royal standard and the imperial state crown was on top of the coffin. Thank you so much tonight for joining us. I hope we've done justice. Next week, we'll bring some new guests to reflect on the funeral. But then also, as they say, we move on as the story moves on. Thank you so much for joining us. From me, Mohammed Shafiq, from the whole team here at British Muslim TV, take care of yourself and each other. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.